This is Rich Chiga. He's a Chinese rapper by way of Indonesia, and he's very popular on the internet. This is Joji. He's a Japanese-Australian singer, and he's also very popular on the internet. Plus, Joji invented the Harlem Shake meme. Let me say that again. This guy, Joji, in the blood bathtub, invented the Harlem Shake meme. But we'll come back to that. So Rich and Joji are both signed to 88 Rising, an entertainment company hoping to build a lasting global brand that will outlive singular moments of virality. They primarily create content combining Asian culture and hip-hop, a formula that apparently pleases the internet gods greatly. They've only been around for 18 months, but they're already putting up major label numbers.
I think that we have an unprecedented collective of talent, a group of predominantly Asian artists, really making waves globally, which from an independent point of view as well.
88's founder, Sean Miyashiro, cut his teeth launching Vice's electronic music channel, Thump. But quickly, Sean became interested in life beyond dance music.
I knew that after launching a whole content platform that I have kind of the ability and the know-how to do it again, but for what was the question?
So Sean moved to the Bronx to start over and figure it out. He couldn't afford an office space, so he worked out of his car at the top of a grimy parking garage.
Everything kind of started here. If you look around, this is my environment. This is my serenity, really. 88 Rising was built here. Built on the grounds of LA Fitness, residence in a parking garage. I was living in the Bronx. I'm just like, damn, where the hell do I go? So I just come up here and I just kind of figure things out every single day. Being like, okay, what the hell is this thing? Coming here was kind of like my own kind of private office, basically. To be honest, I would even go to the bathroom here. I would take pisses here, you know what I mean? It was, it's just too far to go back down there. When I need Wi-Fi, I'd spend a good part of the day at Dunkin' Donuts. Hi, how are you? Can I get a chicken snack wrap?
Before 88 Rising officially launched, Sean caught a surprise break in the form of a Twitter friendship with a funny 16-year-old kid from Indonesia named Brian, who taught himself English by watching Rubik's Cube tutorial videos on YouTube. Seriously, that's true.
I thought his Twitter was genius, from the future, just crazy, and just the shit that he was saying, the memes he was making. But I didn't know that he rapped or anything like that. I really didn't, and he came up with that stick 2 weeks later.
12 in the morning, pop shells for a living and baby gon' smell blood trail every minute road.
Dat Stick was Brian's first ever attempt at making a rap song, and it immediately went viral.
Everything was great about it, but the one thing that I noticed is the song was hard as hell. Just everything about it, man. Just it was menacing, bro.
Soon after the video dropped, Brian signed with 88 Rising.
I'll FaceTime with Rich. Sorry for calling you Rich Chiga on my phone, Rich. Brian, he gets super pissed off that he's saved in my phone as Rich Chiga. He's like, dude, am I not a human to you? What's good, bro?
What's good, brother?
How you doing?
Doing great. I did the sound check.
How was it?
It was tight.
But you've been a bitch, suck a thick cock.
So, Brian could definitely rap, but some viewers understandably took offense at a Chinese kid satirizing rap cliches and calling himself Rich Chiga. But if a group of well-known rappers saw the video and genuinely liked it, that could at least help validate Brian as a legit hip-hop artist. Plus, it could be really funny.
It was just kind of an idea that I just had on the spot. Everything that rappers say is better and funnier and smarter and wittier. It's just more entertaining. We just edit it as tight as possible, put it up, and it really worked.
12 in the morning, pop shells for the living in.
Yo, this nigga got a pouch on and a Reebok pouch.
This is the hardest nigga of all time.
You said when you come for a trigger like me, that was dope.
Like, it's just lit, and I think people will take it as a joke at first, but it's like if he ran with that and kept doing more videos like that, it's just lit.
You know, I'd never been to America before, and like all of a sudden, it's like I see like all the rappers that I listen to just like reacting to my stuff, and I was like, what? How did this happen?
The reaction video also went viral and even led to a remix of Dat Stick featuring Wu-Tang's Ghostface.
I'll get on that track. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Really, on the remix?
Yeah. Oh, you know him?
And yeah, the remix went viral too. Brian has since acknowledged the misstep in his name and claims he may change it. But for the time being, he's still Rich Chigga to his fans. An ever-growing global audience, hungry for more releases from emerging talent around the world.
I didn't know that it was gonna be this impactful and this important to people, and I'm very thankful and blessed that it has. And every day now that I wake up, it's like it's just like a new mission every day.
A major part of that mission involves Joji. Remember the bloody bath guy? He's a former YouTube personality in the middle of a career transition.
The sound of this song, Will He, it's like a trap song that you can like slow dance to. Awkward prom shit, you know what I mean? I used to do crazy episodic internet videos. It was going well, and one day it was me and a few friends just in a room. We were casually chilling, and then someone plays the song, and it's brand new at the time. I happened to have a lot of costumes laying around, so I told the other guys, I was like, get in these costumes and let's just dance to it. Like, who cares? We were like, okay, let's just go crazy at the drop. So that video goes up. I go to sleep, and the next morning, everyone's doing it. Like, next morning. That taught me a lot about the internet, how people want to just be a part of something. And from that point on, something changed, and I was a little better at understanding demographics and people and what they want to see and what they want to hear. I was friends with a couple other artists who were affiliated with 88, and then I also started to realize that 88 is the bridge between Western and Asian entertainment, and I really wanted to be part of that.
Joji just released the In Tongues EP, his first project as a serious artist.
Joji's In Tongues record came out a couple weeks ago. It's #2 on Billboard on the R&B charts, which is crazy for independent release, and he's like a brand new artist.
And the success is even more impressive, knowing he went from creating something like this,
It's just Taco Bell. What could possibly go wrong?
to creating something Tonight, Rich Chigga has a show in New York City. Tickets sold out in an hour.
I came here, I'm first online. I was here at 1.
Yeah,
I was the third person online.
So why'd you get here so early?
Because I want to see Rich Chigga. I want to touch him.
What do you guys think of Joji?
Oh my God!
That's my dad, son. You guys cop the new EP or like?
Yeah.
I woke up at 6 in the morning just to cop this shit. And then I listened to it, and that shit started making me cry.
This is actually kind of exciting. Every time, this never gets old. Like, you live online and social media, but like, there's nothing like just being with the people.
More often than not, viral success happens by accident. And then after an appearance on Ellen or Jimmy Kimmel, the creator's star power fizzles out. But Idiot Rising has figured out how to turn potential gimmicks into brands with an actual following that keeps coming back for the next thing.
Oh, shit!
So keep an eye out for Idiot's next move. But more than likely, it won't be covered on network television or terrestrial radio. Although, as they've already proven, nowadays that really doesn't matter.
Online retailer Farfetch is betting it can shape the future. This is its concept store, showcasing the latest in retail tech.
How do you capture all of that fantastic information that you gather in store with customers, touch and feel products? And we created a concept called the Connected Rail. And this is using a combination of RFID and ultrasound. The RFID signal recognizes the product, and the ultrasound recognizes the movement. Take the product off, and then you'll start to see your products appear. And essentially, it's like online browsing behavior. Whichever products you touch and pick up in the store are automatically sent to your app. This is effectively what you've created is your in-store wish list. In the middle, you'll see essentially a hologram of the product. What the customer sees, they control the experience on a touch device. What this allows the customer to do is take elements of products and then add their own style to it. Right, so this is the connected mirror. So in this example, I see my products. I select a coat, and that's tried it, and it's slightly too big for me. So what I can do is choose an alternative size and send a request to the sales associate, and they'll bring that size to me in the fitting room mirror. You'll also see that we've got some product recommendations here. Crucially, the sales associate's able to push items into the mirror from their device. If you wanted to, you could simply use the mirror and pay and go. Your items would then be packed and dispatched to you afterwards.
Do you want me to turn you so you're looking outwards? Yes, please. How about there? First time we came out with B, Jade said, "It feels like I've been released from prison." Do you want these, missus?
Definitely.
Definitely. Right. Yeah. And she could say hello to everybody, people she hadn't seen for months.
It's
Oh, it's
Jade.
Jade.
Oh. So you can talk to Jade through this.
Hi, Katie. She's there. Hi.
Every time anyone's seen her, they want to know why she's there. And it's kind of the opposite of when you're in a wheelchair and people see you and they kind of go, oh, should I look? I don't know what the right protocol is. When there's a tiny robot with its bright little eyes going around just looking happy everywhere, it really opens you up for conversation.
You've got some friends here, look.
Hiya. When I saw her for the first time, I remember thinking, this is going to change things. This is one of those points where if this was a book, this would be the cliffhanger. condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which means that I have a lot of dislocations, there's a lot of pain, and a lot of seizures and whatnot. So I can end up on my own in my room for long periods of time.
Yeah, my love.
A lot of the time, with a condition like my own, of course there's the pain, and the pain is bad, and the dislocations are bad, and the seizures and being in paralysis and never knowing whether you're going to be able to wake up properly tomorrow, that's bad. But what's worse still is being able to count the number of people you see a day on one hand.
Are you ready?
Sure am, I'm just hoping the connection's going to stay.
Yeah, me too. Alright, here we go.
When you're used to just the same little metre by metre and a half window every day, and you've been there for months, being able to just see the sky from somewhere else, or the tops of trees, or a sign, is incredible. Or being able to have that kind of chat in the car that most people would probably take for granted.
I'm going to go past Grandma and Grandad so you can give them a wave. Now, if Jade is particularly seizure-y, she can still take part. And that's brilliant, really, because before she would just be left in a bed or in the house with just her carers. It's quite a small world, that.
Right, so there's one of them. Here, this costume I'm busy making at the moment. When I'm not on bed rest and I'm not just wearing pyjamas all the time, I enjoy being able to dress as different characters and go to Comic Cons and that kind of thing, because it just lets me show a different side of myself, and it's a bit of fun. If you can't go out that often, you've got to enjoy it when you do.
Was that? Good.
It's one of those weird things where I want to not have to use B because I want to be well enough to be able to go to those places myself. Like, it really makes a big difference to me to be able to go into school. But the thing is, with my condition fluctuating all of the time, I can't go into school reliably.
He's written out bigger on the board. Thank you.
Today's the first day that I've been in school via B, and so far it's interesting. Still a few little things that we need to work out, but for the most part, I think it's going fairly well. And it's brilliant because I can really tell the difference between today and yesterday. How yesterday I forced myself to go into school when I wasn't very well, and I was really tired afterwards and ended up having loads of seizures. Whereas today, I've been able to do all of the work. I've been able to keep a clear head and not be ill, which means I'm able to be more focused on my schoolwork.
So there is my first step of working, is to simplify root 8. The algebra test is next week.
Now I'm trying to make friendships which I'll be able to maintain with B. Before that, I end up letting people down quite often. B gives me hope, yeah. She's just always there. And if I can't do something, she can. And if I need sort of assistance to be able to make commitments, then she's there, and she means that I feel like a more valuable person because I'm more reliable.
it debuted, the 4G wireless we have today allowed people for the first time to hit the road and explore unknown places with only a smartphone for directions. When 5G arrives, it could enable driverless cars to take us there as well. 5G stands for 5th generation mobile networks or wireless systems. It's insanely fast and can accommodate a lot more connected devices. But the reason it's being called revolutionary is because 5G will allow connected devices to speak to each other as well as people.
Right now we're living in a world where really it's a one-way experience.
That's Bloomberg tech reporter Ian King.
The network talks to your phone, you look at your phone and access data, then you send something back to the network. What we're being told about 5G is that really for the first time we're going to see machines communicating with each other over mobile networks in a meaningful way.
5G could end up being 100 times faster than what we have now, with speeds that could reach 20 gigabits per second. In plain English, that means downloading a full-length HD movie in seconds. 5G will also increase total bandwidth, which we will need in order to accommodate the growing Internet of Things. We're talking about the class of devices like internet-connected refrigerators, thermostats, dog collars, but 5G will enable many, many more.
Things like your utility network, factories, where machines are just sat there not connected at all. Suddenly they're all going to be connected. Suddenly we're going to be able to have real-time monitoring. Other things like cars, like utility poles, like your light, the light poles.
But perhaps the biggest advance will be a huge reduction in communication lag time, known as latency. A network of driverless cars will need the speed of 5G to ping each other multiple times per second to avoid collisions. Near instantaneous data transfers could allow doctors to perform surgery remotely with a robotic scalpel. So how will all this work? First, you need to improve network density.
And that's just a fancy word for saying you put more towers out there. What we're being told is that's not actually the case with 5G.
The idea is 5G will not only use the existing mobile spectrum, but also tap into higher frequencies called millimeter waves. Millimeter waves can carry more data, but only travel short distances. This may mean you'll see a lot more of these base stations around town. And the new towers may have as many as 100 antenna ports, compared to about a dozen on 4G cell towers. So when will we get 5G? Getting 5G ready is expected to cost providers $275 billion over 7 years in the US alone. Look for the first 5G service to pop up in big cities sometime in 2019.
The cubicle represents a tyranny. It confines your imagination, your thoughts, into a small physical area. Imagine pretty much every software engineer or finance person being able to, disconnect from their desk and look at holographic monitors on a beach and doing their work from there. That's not going to be science fiction. It's the modern office place.
Silicon Valley is all about building the future. A startup called Meta thinks it's getting there first, thanks to a big bet that it's made on augmented reality.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Welcome to Meta.
Thank you.
Call it a 360-degree office where you can spatialize your thoughts as part of your workflow for education, architecture, design, engineering, etc.
People often mix up augmented reality with virtual reality. VR totally blocks your ability to see or hear the real world. AR overlays holograms onto what you already see. Meta has tried to make its version of the workspace feel familiar.
You grab the hologram instead of using a controller or a mouse, and your brain already knows how to do it. In other words, we've designed an operating system that humanity has always known how to use. So you can see this eyeball, which is, by the way, photorealistic. You can see my hand is occluding the eyeball, and now the eyeball is occluding my hand, right? You see those two circles? They get small, and then they turn into this glowing white ball, and then I can move my hand around supernaturally. I can do this with two hands and rotate the thing. I can stretch it. I can throw it back right into the shelving system, and that's all you have to learn to become a modern worker.
And to prove this, the employees at Meta have started to get rid of their computer monitors, trading them in for Meta's augmented reality headsets. Myron thinks that in less than a decade, we'll all be just wearing strips of glass that can project holograms.
In the early 80s, everybody had computers on their desktop, but no one was using them because they had a lot of work to do. So they were still using typewriters. And at some point, the CEO took all the typewriters away and everybody was forced to use their computers. So it's very exciting to see a new generation of technology, a new paradigm.
I consider us like pioneers in the holographic wild. I'm pulling up my browser with my hands and sending out emails to colleagues and just kind of really acclimating to the new environment.
Now you're putting on my computer, essentially. Our digital lives live on our phones. We have all of our pictures and notes and all these kinds of things. So why don't you write yourself a little sticky note? I like it. And go ahead and just take your fist right over the top of the sticky note and close your fist. And now...
Oh, what? Meta's own transition to augmented reality has run into plenty of unexpected problems. And it's still going to be a while before you'll start to see these devices in your office. But I think it's a future worth waiting for.
If we could see these holograms between us, we will have been able to share our work with one another more naturally, more efficiently, and more productively than ever before. Humanity will have evolved slightly.
This is Hatsune Miku, Japan's sensational virtual pop star. She's released over 100,000 songs in multiple languages and performed sold-out concerts around the world. Her image has appeared in games, on TV, in car races, and is even etched on the side of a Japanese space rocket.
I came for Hatsune Miku, Carlos.
She's Lady Gaga's favorite digital pop star and opened shows for her in the US 3 years ago. Tens of thousands of fans attended her exhibition and live shows near Tokyo recently.
理想のアイドルっていうと、どの曲でもミクはすごい綺麗に歌ってくれる。
他没有缺点啊，没有任何让我们感到不开心的一些新闻。
She's everything to everybody. That's probably why she's so popular.
Miku's creator Hiroyuki Ito and his Sapporo-based company have been developing the virtual diva for over 10 years.
初音ミクとは、キャラクターとしてすごく、YouTube とかで検索すると、たくさんの初音ミクが出てくるんですけども、元々の、初音ミクのその原点は歌声を合成する、ソフトウェアなんです。
Both the software and character are named Hatsune Miku, meaning the first sound of the future. Originally based on Yamaha's Vocaloid technology, Miku the software has a sound bank containing voice samples and a huge array of tools. You input the melody and lyrics, then Miku the character sings them. To date, Krypton has sold 120,000 software licenses at $200 each to fans around the world who use it to create numerous songs and share them online. Some of the fan-created songs are chosen to be part of Miku's concerts, for which they're paid a royalty fee.
元々初音ミクっていうその、存在自体がそのボトムアップって言いますか、中にはアマチュアクリエイターじゃなくて今もうすでに、プロになって活躍している方もいらっしゃるんですけども。
The company also has other revenue streams. It makes money from merchandising, licensing deals, and concert ticket sales. According to the real-life musicians who perform with Hatsune Miku, the virtual pop star is interesting and surprising.
今年で3年ぐらい、ちょうど3年ぐらいやってきて、ライブも数十本、数百本だったと。そういうことが演奏によって起こせるためのそういう器みたいな感じになってます。初音ミクらしさって僕はあんまりない。初音ミクって何だってあり。
For Ito, Miku has the potential to change the way we think about music.
そういう新しいそのテクノロジーによって新しい音楽のあり方っていうものを模索していきたいと思っていました。
And for her fans, it goes even further.
初音ミクって魂がないので、だからみんな魂を作り上げるために存在する。
Now, there are a lot of fitness gadgets out there. In my quest to get fit, I tested 17 of them over the last few months. At least one personal trainer I know was a little bit skeptical.
Yeah, I've been watching these new technologies come to the market for almost as long as I've been a personal trainer. They're just tricks and tropes. They're not much different than the Bowflex machines or, to be honest, the original Jane Fonda workout video.
But some of these gadgets that are just coming to the market do so much more than what they used to do, just tracking your activities. Out of all of them, this chest strap was my favorite. It comes with a robot coach that points to the future, one where you might not need a human trainer at all. And it works like this. You wear the chest strap so that it can read your heart rate, and that connects to Move's free app that talks to you.
Welcome to Move Heart Rate Hit Outdoor Running. Let's get moving and warm up in Zone 2.
Move's computerized coach tells you what to do at that exact moment, whether you're running outside or you're doing body weight exercises indoors.
Swing your arms faster to get your legs moving quicker. Let's crush this round.
And by reading your heart rate, she knows exactly how hard you're working. She keeps you honest.
Way to go, you are in the target zone. Keep pushing, you're almost at the end of the round. Don't give up.
I've been running for 7 years now, and my biggest problem is that I never push myself hard enough. I end up going on the same slow, comfortable 30-minute jog, but the Move HR Burn blasted me out of that rut. By the end of these half-hour exercises, I was drenched in sweat in a way that I never am when I work out alone. Training with a real person is great, whether that's your group instructor or your coach or your personal trainer, but humans, they're expensive. For the rest of us, this $60 gadget is all you need.
what does it take to change the world? A big army? A cure to a pandemic? A revolution? All of these take either a lot of people, thousands of hours, or massive amounts of space. But for Julian Assange, all he needs is one room, an internet connection, and the world will listen. Assange is located here, and more specifically, right here. And from that location, he's posted government secrets, classified documents, and leaked emails from some of the world's most powerful people. And in doing so, has been labeled a hero, a villain, a nihilist, and everything in between. This is how an Australian programmer sequestered in the Ecuadorian embassy in London became one of the most influential and notorious people in the world. Born in 1971 in Townsville, Australia, Assange has always been on the move. Living in over 30 homes by the time he was in his mid-teens, Assange, along with his mother and half-brother, finally settled down in Melbourne. His introduction to hacking started at 16 when he was given a Commodore 64, which he attached to a modem. He attended the University of Melbourne, where he studied programming, physics, and mathematics. He never graduated, but that doesn't mean he didn't get an education. By 1991, Assange hacked into the Pentagon, U.S. Navy, and other branches of the U.S. government. In 1996, he was caught by the Australian Federal Police and charged with over 30 counts of hacking and computer-related crimes. He didn't get any jail time, but he was fined $2,100.
I think the first taste of what would come later was the hacking that he did as a young programmer, and that really sort of foreshadowed a healthy skepticism of the use and abuse of technology by governments.
That's Vernon Silver.
I'm a reporter for Bloomberg's investigations team.
Assange's youth as a hacker laid the foundation for him to start WikiLeaks in 2006. But what is WikiLeaks? It's a website that posts unfiltered, usually classified documents. What separates it from every other media outlet is that they have no editorial hierarchy. With a publication like the New York Times, information comes in, they take that information, package it, then disseminate it for the public to see. WikiLeaks, however, cuts out the middleman.
WikiLeaks gathers information, most of it given to them anonymously. So what they're doing is really very simple. They get the information in one end from who gives it to them and out the other with sometimes minimal interference. Julian Assange is the leader of that, the mastermind, the creator, and really, because he thinks of it as a journalistic enterprise, the editor-in-chief.
But every story starts with a source, and Assange has some unconventional sources.
Julian Assange does not hack as far as we know. He is the recipient of people who are either insiders who give him secret documents or hacked emails from a foreign power.
That's Eli Lake.
I am a columnist for Bloomberg.
And there was no source bigger for Assange than Chelsea Manning. He used to be known as U.S. soldier Bradley Manning. In 2010, Manning provided Assange and WikiLeaks with hundreds of thousands of leaked government documents. WikiLeaks quietly began releasing the documents in February of 2010, then made big headlines in April by posting what is now known as the Collateral murder video.
Come on, fire!
It was a vivid, graphic video. It changed the debate on the Iraq War, and importantly, it put WikiLeaks on the map when they put it online, and they couldn't be ignored at that point.
And those leaks were just the beginning. They went on to post more than 90,000 leaked documents known as the Afghan war logs, 390,000 documents known as the Iraq war logs, and 250,000 private messages between diplomats called cables in what is now known as Cablegate. These leaks were met with very real ethical questions.
The problem with publishing those cables was that a number of confidential sources for U.S. diplomats who faced real danger when their names were exposed.
Then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton drove the point home that
every country, including the United States, must be able to have candid conversations about the people and nations with whom they deal.
Shortly after Cablegate, the Swedish government issued an arrest warrant for Assange on allegations of rape and molestation. He claimed the allegations were fabricated to get him extradited to the United States, a claim the U.S. government denied. Either way, Assange's next move was
to seek refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy, which really was the beginning of the new chapter in his life and what we're dealing with now, which is him being stuck in London.
What was supposed to be an office in an embassy is now Assange's self-imposed prison to this very day. But that doesn't mean he's slowed down. Since being trapped in the embassy, WikiLeaks has released files about Guantanamo Bay prisoners, Syrian political figures, and the draft to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And then came the 2016 U.S. election.
Thousands of leaked emails showed Democratic Party officials possibly plotting against Bernie Sanders in his race against Hillary Clinton.
Over the course of 68 days, WikiLeaks released 20,000 confidential Democratic National Committee emails. In terms of the presidential race, if you look right here, when Assange released the first batch of emails, Trump actually takes his first lead against Clinton.
I think we've had enough of the Clintons, in all fairness. Don't you think?
Once WikiLeaks started exposing secrets of the Democratic Party, Julian Assange became a hero to many on the right. Public opinion kind of flip-flopped.
WikiLeaks.
From the emails, we now know Hillary Clinton's campaign manager makes risotto, and also how the DNC squashed Bernie Sanders' campaign. One thing we don't know is who gave Assange the stolen emails in the first place.
Many leading Democrats say they suspect it was the Russians. They released an analysis from a private cybersecurity firm that had said it was the Russians.
But Assange claims
our source is not the Russian government, and it is not a state party.
So this is where we stand today. The public still doesn't know who provided the emails to WikiLeaks. Meanwhile, Assange is still running WikiLeaks and still releasing documents. In March 2017, he started publishing documents from the CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence called Vault 7.
The CIA, the agency charged with finding and keeping our top secrets, can't keep its own secrets.
As long as Assange has a connection to the world, no government secret will be too far from exposure.
Julian Assange is still in the embassy. Maybe he'll leave, maybe he won't. Kind of regardless, his work has been done. He's changed the way people think about their governments, about their own secrets, about their own hackability, and really the world has changed because of him.
To expose everything you won't admit. And action. This entire video is based on a true story. When I do like motivational speeches or even tell myself like love yourself and you should love yourself.
This is Lily Singh.
But to fans all over the world, she's the YouTube star Superwoman.
What if everyone's a girl? Superwoman. I know we can change the world for the better, one positive day at a time.
My parents now know what I do. They didn't know what I did for a long time in the beginning of my career. I was just making videos in my room. They had no idea.
Mom, Dad, have you seen my keys? I can't find them anywhere. Because you're always on phone.
Until someone called them, like a family member from another part of Canada, was like, Canada, is your daughter making videos? And the mom was like, I don't know, Lily, are you making videos?
Just making videos grew into an entire career. Today, Lily's YouTube channel has some 12 million subscribers, over 2 billion views, and guest stars like Michelle Obama, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and Seth Rogen.
I think a lot of young girls are raised to believe that you're gonna go to school and then graduate and then get married and then get a job and have kids.
And Lily was on that path, all the way through a psychology degree at York University in Toronto. But when she started thinking about a career,
I started to immensely panic and think something was wrong with me because I tried to figure out my life and it wasn't working in that straight line.
It was 2010, and YouTube was only 5 years old.
I thought nothing of YouTube. I was probably the last person in my circle of friends to discover YouTube. And I remember when I did, I thought, this is so strange. There's people making videos in their rooms, and other people are watching them.
So she figured, why not give it a shot?
I one day posted a video because I was sad, and I wanted to be creative and happy.
She didn't know how to edit video or write scripts, so she winged it.
It was so bad and so cringe. And my expectation was literally nothing. I was like, I'm gonna put this video up, a couple of my friends are gonna watch it, probably make fun of me, and that's gonna be the end of this. The second and third video came from, wait, 70 people watched my first one, can I get 80 to watch the next one?
She kept creating, she kept posting, and the viewers kept coming. Lily had found an audience.
A lot of the comments were, oh my God, there's a brown girl on YouTube.
More specifically, Indian. Lily's parents immigrated to Canada from India, and Lily was born and raised in Scarborough, near Toronto.
My home life was awesome. My parents, even though I portrayed them to be quite strict in my videos.
Oi, Lily, wear the rest of your skirt, huh? I teach you like this, to walk around like this, showing everything to everyone?
They actually aren't like that at all. They're pretty modern and pretty cool.
Your dress is short. Don't know what for.
And were pretty lenient with me. I mean, I got away with a lot of things. I was a brat. I was a brat.
She had a different idea of what she wanted out of life than other kids. In a grade school graduation slideshow, her classmates said they wanted to be lawyers and doctors.
And then I came up and I was like, rapper.
Making out with your friends, man. But then you say that you hate hoes.
I could just feel my parents being like, why?
Because that's just not something women really did in the Singh family.
I know there was a ton of people that weren't happy about my birth being a female, so I think, and that's some real-ish, but it's a real thing. The best thing I could have done to prove to so many people that didn't want my mom to have a daughter was to become Superwoman.
What if everyone it's a girl, Superwoman?
It was the name of Lily's favorite hip-hop song by Lil Mo featuring Fabulous.
I love the song so much because it was one of the only songs at the time that was an empowering female song, where Lil Mo's going on about, like, I will save guys with my superpowers, and I will save girls with my superpowers, and I am the Superwoman. I thought, this name that I've had for so long that empowered me when I was younger, I'm gonna make this my screen name.
Maybe there should be a new series.
Superwoman didn't just burst onto the scene overnight with a viral video. It was a steady climb fueled by hard work.
The moment that I thought this is going somewhere and this could be a career was the first time I performed internationally. It was in India. And it was the first time where I was truly across the world and people knew my videos.
Singh has transformed herself from a bratty kid to an internet personality to a media mogul. She starred in a feature film, A Trip to Unicorn Island, in 2016. And her book, How to Be a Boss, hit the New York Times bestseller list in 2017 while she was on a 30-city international tour. Lily started out with the goal of getting millions of subscribers and financial security.
Hurry the hell up!
But after surpassing those goals, success has new meaning.
I've really come to terms with the fact that my definition of success is what's the best legacy I can leave behind. And it's not the number of views, the number of subscribers. It is the number of people that can say, this girl changed my life or changed something in my life positively.
CTE is often found in the brains of deceased athletes, military veterans, and others with a history of repetitive brain trauma. Hundreds have donated their brains to the VA Boston University Concussion Legacy Foundation Brain Bank.
This is a former NFL player who died in his early 70s, and this is a veteran who also died in his early 70s.
Dr. Ann McKee dissects these brains.
The hippocampus and the mammillary bodies are very important for memory. I can see that they're slightly affected.
McKee recently dissected the brain of former New England Patriots player Aaron Hernandez, who was convicted of murder and later committed suicide.
You'll see right away that the brain is showing signs of shrinkage. You can see the crevices in the brain that you can't see in the normal.
McKee says Hernandez's severe case of CTE impacted his decision-making, depression, and ability to control rage and aggression. Right now, she thinks we're underestimating how many people have CTE.
We were able to distinguish between CTE and controls and CTE and Alzheimer's disease. The next question is, can we do this in the blood, and can we do this in living people? And we aren't there yet with those answers.
But the need for a diagnosis in the living is motivating companies such as Quanterix in Lexington, Massachusetts, to work faster on technology that could diagnose concussions and CTE in as few as 30 minutes. Kevin Rosovsky is the CEO.
It's like a high-powered microscope. And so by doing that, we can see little biomarkers that you couldn't see before in the blood.
Quanterix received a grant from the NFL and just went public. Since then, its stock is up more than 40%. The company sells a machine called Simoa for $175,000 to other biotechs, hospitals, and researchers.
And for the first time in history, we're able to see brain health in blood, and that's a major breakthrough, and that's leading to less invasive testing, and we've already been able to see evidence of concussions, and there's the beginning evidence of being able to see the accumulated effect of concussions.
Quanterix is also trying to detect Alzheimer's disease, multiple sclerosis, and ALS. Rosovsky says he thinks diagnosing concussions will be easier than diagnosing CTE.
Diagnosing CT in the living probably is a couple years away. We're real excited to see the progress, but reducing some of that work into actual tests in a laboratory takes time. There's regulatory approvals. There's a lot of red tape that you have to go through.
Also in this race to diagnose CTE in the blood are Athlon Medical and Exosome Sciences. And New York's Mount Sinai Hospital is scanning for the disease in the living. But it's just one step in a series of questions for those with serious head trauma. There's still no cure for CTE.
Even if we had a great idea for a treatment, there's no way to test whether it's effective or not. So that's the enormous advance that we'll get if we can develop a biomarker for this disease.
In Boston, Ann Mostu, Bloomberg News.
Wine is a $300 billion global industry where one person's opinion can make fortunes or break them. That's because of this man, Robert Parker, and his newsletter, The Wine Advocate. For 3 decades, he dominated as the world's most influential wine critic. Now Parker's protege is building an empire of his own. Antonio Galloni runs Venice.
Antonio, tell me, what are you trying to build at Venice?
Well, at Venice, we started with the idea in 2013 of building a world-class platform. We have a database of about 250,000 professionally written reviews. On Delectable, we have 7 million user reviews. Through Delectable, we also have a partnership with Whole Foods and several other partnerships that we can't announce just yet. And when you put that all together, what we have is something that no other company in our space can even come close to.
Do you think of yourself as the next Parker?
Not at all.
Why?
Because Steve Jobs said you can't live your life trying to be somebody else. So he's one of my biggest influences, and I've never wanted to be a replica of somebody else because a replica is never as good as the original. Bob is a genius, fantastic, one of a kind. We're going to be something completely different, and I have no desire to be some version of somebody else.
Different in what way?
Every decision that I've made at this company is completely anathemic to what Bob did with his company. I want our writers to be partners. All of my senior people are locked into the company. They all have equity or they have a path to equity based on business results. That's something that we never had at Parker. Our benefits are world-class, and everything that we've done at Venice is completely different from that model. When Steve Tanzer, who is the most experienced active wine critic in America, wants to work with us, that says something. When Alessandro Masnaghetti, who's the best cartographer of of vineyards, wants to work with us, that says something. When Neil Martin, who's a superstar wine critic with enormous experience in Bordeaux and Burgundy and the former lead critic at The Advocate, wants to come and be part of our team, that says something.
You make it sound like the Wine Advocate was a disaster as a company and a miserable experience as an employee.
No, it was great because I got to work with Bob Parker when he was at his prime, you know, and Bob was like a second father to me, and we talked on the phone all the time, and he gave me great advice.
Can anyone's palate dominate the wine criticism business the way Parker's did? And should anyone's palate dominate it the way his did?
I just think the world is very different today. You know, I mean, it's just a totally different world. It's probably not healthy to have a single person dominating the world.
It's not even wine criticism, it's the wine industry.
Yeah, that's probably not the healthiest thing in the world. But I think that there's just such an opportunity right now with social media and technology to reach such a massive number of people that I think it's possible that 1 or 2 people will actually have more influence than Bob Parker did, because they will, again, this goes back to your first question, not trying to be a version of somebody else. You see this in sports all the time. It's like, oh, well, nobody will ever beat this record. And then somebody comes along, you know, it was like tennis, Pete Sampras. Nobody's ever going to win as many Grand Slams. Now you have 2 guys who are ahead of that and 1 knocking on the door. And so I think a lot like that.
You're a former investment banker. How does that inform and influence what you're doing and what you've done?
My generation has had to deal with a lot more challenges. That's why I think we're actually much better poised for the future. My first job in finance, the first thing that happened was long-term capital, 1998. Then the tech bubble melted down. Then there was a mutual fund trading scandal. You know, that was all like within about 5 or 6 years. And these are the things that I had to deal with as a young executive. My peers who were 20 years older didn't know how to manage in crisis. They'd only seen Black Monday. They'd just been in a big bull market. It's very different. So I'm very lucky. People of my generation or a little bit younger have actually had to deal with a lot more crises. I think that's actually good for learning how to cope with challenges in business.
From the outside, it kind of looks like you're trying to demolish the house that Parker built, right? You left the Wine Advocate.
Yeah.
You merged with one of his chief rivals.
Yeah.
And you just hired his successor, Neil Martin.
Mm-hmm.
So are you?
I think what that says is that all the best people want to work at our company. And that's really what we strive to create starting in 2013. We wanted to create a world-class company that would attract the best-in-class talent, and not just on the content side, on the technology side, on the digital side, our office, and at every level, what we're trying to, we only hire superstars, and we're looking for those superstars.
In the world of professional wrestling, there's something called a swerve.
Hulk Hogan has betrayed WCW.
Some examples. These tag team partners are called babyfaces, or the good guys. Then one of them swerves when he super kicks his tag team partner in the head, quickly assuming the role of the bad guy, or what the wrestling world calls the heel.
Are you kidding? What a despicable act that was!
Or a match is almost lost when, what's that? The superstar wrestler appears out of nowhere sprinting down the aisle to save the match.
That's the Warriors music! That's the Ultimate Warrior!
That's a swerve. So it should go as no surprise that World Wrestling Entertainment, known as the WWE, the most popular brand of sports entertainment in the world, is prepared for any swerves that come their way. So here's the story of how the WWE learned to see the swerve coming. So I spoke to Bloomberg reporters Felix Gillette.
I'm a writer for Bloomberg News for the global business team.
And Kim Basine.
And I'm the U.S. luxury reporter at Bloomberg.
To find out exactly how the WWE is positioning itself for an all-out global invasion, which starts with a massive change to their lucrative pay-per-view model.
WWE basically pioneered the pay-per-view model on cable. I remember as a kid, when the pay-per-view events came up, all of our friends would scramble around and try and get one of the parents to pay for it.
But in 2014, they took a huge risk.
They saw a little bit sooner than some of the other entertainment brands that where this whole thing was moving was away from cable and satellite television and towards on-demand streaming video apps. They made this risky decision, in essence, cannibalizing that pay-per-view model, which they had essentially built.
And after some early turbulence, it's working. Roughly 1.5 million people are paying $9.99 a month for the WWE app, making it the 5th most popular streaming OTT service. This adapt-or-die approach is in the WWE's DNA. Over the past 30 years, the company always seems to think 2 steps ahead. In the early 90s,
WWE was at its most threatened when Ted Turner took them on with WCW,
which stands for World Championship Wrestling. And back then, the WCW was winning the ratings war. So in order to compete with them,
WWE had changed its product from a family-friendly kind of cartoonish style to this really raw. That's why they called their show Raw. It was this raw style of wrestling.
With violent, outrageous, reality-inspired plot lines and aggressive personas.
From a 16-foot ladder!
And they won that fight against Ted Turner. And they bought WCW.
The early 2000s ushered in an era of testosterone-driven programming aimed at the red-blooded American male.
Bra and panties matches, and people smash each other over their head with like barbed wire bats and things like that.
Until 2015, when WWE fans started a hashtag #GiveDivas a Chance. Since then, WWE has hired 40 more female wrestlers, and that growing cast of female characters was part of a much larger plan.
They started to try to appeal to a broader set of people.
Let's attract more female fans. And after we've attracted more female fans, let's attract more international fans. They're broadening their base, and they're doing that in large part to make it more advertising friendly.
And not just friendly to advertisers.
They're trying to build up their fan base in China. They're trying to build up their fan base in Europe. They, already have a pretty good fan base in India.
India is a place where they already have an established wrestling culture.
Because of the gigantic Indian wrestler, the Great Khali. But there's still a lot of work to do. While the WWE set a revenue record in 2017, only 30% of it is coming from an overseas audience. And there's one person whose responsibility is to grow that number.
The buck eventually stops at Vince McMahon, no matter what's happening within WWE.
Yeah, he's a very controlling guy, and it's a very, very, very tightly scripted company.
And that goes all the way down the board to the big stars' entrance music. And their outfits and things like that.
So with a CEO like McMahon always planning 2 moves ahead and an aggressive push into multiple international markets, a big issue is money.
It's hard to do all those things simultaneously without committing a huge amount of capital to it.
And that's where the WWE becomes an attractive company for buyers.
Potentially, one thing that could happen with WWE is they could benefit by being acquired by a bigger technology or telecom company, an Amazon or Facebook or a 21st Century Fox.
So with a market cap of $2.8 billion, the advantage of owning 100% of their own content, and a rapid consolidation spreading throughout the entertainment industry, it looks like the WWE is well positioned, even if there are swerves ahead.
Thank you very much for coming here.
Thanks for having me.
I've always been relieved ever since you were appointed, because at least until your appointment, I seem to have the most unpronounceable name. But now, so we will keep it as Dara and John. This conference is called The Year Ahead, but in your case, you are close to 6 months into the job. And I wondered what you saw in terms of the year ahead at Uber as your biggest challenge. What's the thing that you think about most when it comes to 2018?
We definitely have our share of challenges at Uber. And for me, where I want to get Uber to the year ahead is a year of normalcy. 2017 was, I think, will go down as one of the most difficult years for any company out there. And I have to give credit to the Uber team and the employees there. It is a group of true believers who believe in our mission, who believe in mobility as a service being available to consumers everywhere at a reasonable cost. And what my job in 2018 is to get rid of the distractions and get the company back to business, get the company back to normalcy. There's a lot that we've done in the past 6 months as far as bringing new investors, driving a new culture and norms where doing the right thing, period, comes first, bringing a new management team, et cetera. There's a lot that we've gotten done. but this is a company that knows how to execute. This is a service. Mobility as a service is something that's universal, that's needed in the world, and I just want to get back to doing
It's
business.
quite interesting. You said true believers.
Yeah.
Normally, true believers are the last possible people where you're able to change a culture. Can you explain a bit about that?
Well, I think that they understand that mobility as a service, bringing the cost of transportation down, making transportation services available to anyone and everyone on a local basis, and partnering with cities to be a solution to traffic, to pollution, et cetera. That is a mission that they all believe in. And I think that they, having seen what happened in 2017, to some extent the crisis, the enormous crisis that the company has gone through, is a benefit because everybody at the company knows now that we need to change, that we need to break with the past as far as the way the company was run. We need to go from growth at any cost to responsible growth and growth in partnership with other players out there. That's clear, but now I've got to kind of get the company down to the normalcy of execution of building great technology, and I think we're going to get there. It's still some tough sledding early on, but I absolutely think we're going to get there.
When you talk about execution, is profits one of the things you want to get? I think you lost $4 billion last year.
Well, profits,
peanuts by the standards of
profits would help. So at some point, we absolutely have to become profitable, and that's part of the plan.
Do you have a kind of goal for that? Do you think you should be profitable by 2022 or by 2020?
I think that we'll be profitable before 2022. This is the business itself.
Do you want to come back a bit closer, 2020?
Yeah, listen, it's not going to, I don't want to name a specific year, but this is a business that the core business, the ride-sharing business, can be profitable within 3 years. We will continue to make very aggressive investments in building out autonomy because we think that's a terrific opportunity for building out new technologies such as Uber Elevate, where near-term profitability is not a goal, but long-term growth is. So we will look to balance near-term profitability, but as a company, we will always be a company that makes big, bold bets and takes big risks.
To what extent, though, do you think that drive to become profitable fights against a little bit of this culture change? If you want to make, you talked about making money, but not at all costs. Do those two things spar against each other?
I don't think that profitability and culture are their issue. It's the company in the past was willing to make trade-offs as it related to how it did business, and I think was guilty of hubris, was guilty of thinking that they knew better than others, and I think that what we know now clearly is that breakneck growth can hide cultural issues, that there are no excuses for not doing the right thing, and that you do have to make trade-offs. And as a management team, we're specifically talking about those trade-offs that you have to make. We have to be a little more patient sometimes because working with governments, regulators, et cetera, sometimes takes longer, but in the end, you build a more lasting business. And so maybe what we went through was necessary, but we're here. We can control our actions from this moment onwards, and I think everyone at Uber from this moment onwards wants to build a great company, not only in terms of growth, but in terms of the kind of company anyone would want to work at.
Can I ask you one thing which you have got a sort of hangover from last year, which is all the regulatory problems, and particularly all the cases against you? I think there are 6 criminal probes or whatever going on.
The lawyers are lining up outside the door.
Which one do you sort of think? Which one do you fear most? I suppose out of these different things.
Listen, I think that all of them are serious issues, and my response is that we're going to be transparent and we're going to take responsibility for our actions in the past. I do think that there are certain circumstances where there was smoke but no fire, and I think as a company we have to defend ourselves and work within kind of the appropriate frameworks. And my goal is just to get beyond this stuff.
But some of these things like pricing policies, surely they go right to the heart of what Uber is, or am I wrong about that?
Yeah, I think they do, but I think that there's a way of being smart but transparent at the same time, and that's where we've got to take the company.
Take me through governments. When you talk to governments privately, do they talk any differently than they do publicly?
Governments?
Yes, governments.
I think that they are honestly a bit relieved with how we are engaging with them, because I think that the engagement is now real. I think they feel like we're out there, we're genuine because we've learned our lessons of the past, and I do think that we can take, for example, the data that we have in terms of traffic and in terms of movement of our drivers and riders, and we can use that data to partner up with cities in order to solve congestion issues, because congestion doesn't help anyone. It wastes enormous amounts of time for consumers. It hurts the environment. And I think that we are aligned with cities, for example, to partner with them in a fundamental way to solve these problems. And I do think that when these are conversations that a number of regulators and cities have wanted to have with us for many years, and I think we are really engaging with them at a depth that I think is going to create a real win-win going forward.
Do you think you were too confrontational on this before?
Yeah, I do. I think that the company was pushing growth. And listen, any innovator, to some extent, the innovation is about questioning past kind of present practices. It's about breaking things, the Facebook breaking things. We just went a step and a half too far. And what I want to keep, hopefully, is the best of both worlds, which is the spirit of innovation, the spirit of can-do, et cetera, but the responsibility of partnership. We don't know better than you. We're actually going to work with you, of actually having dialogue and respect for our city partners, for regulators, and then continuing to take risks and continuing to do daring things. And I think we can accomplish that.
Imagine this audience here is a collection of mayors or a collection of city officials, and you want to depict, this is the Year Ahead conference, depict what the years ahead in this thing are going to be like. How far is driverless cars going to go? You talked just a few days ago about the idea there being flying cars in 10 years' time. Can you just give a description of what you think transport is going to look like?
Well, I think that we think there are three keys to transport and where the industry is going: autonomous, electric, and shared. And I think all three are necessary in order to get to the next level of city planning, et cetera. There are many cities where up to a fifth of the space taken in these cities is taken by parking and storing these cars. And so I do think that you need autonomous, you need electric, and you need shared. And I do think it's going to take some time. True autonomy for every single use case is some ways away. What we bring to bear is our developing autonomy, and we will have autonomous cars on the road, I believe, within the next 18 months, not as a kind of a test case, but as a real case out there. And over a period of time, we're going to bring autonomous transportation and feather it in with the non-autonomous transportation with drivers.
What does feathering in mean?
Feathering in
means to a layman like
feathering
me? Crashing.
Yeah, feathering in means if you're, for example, in Phoenix, and you make a request to go from A to B, which is what you do with Uber, there will be 95% of cases where we may not have everything mapped perfectly, or the weather may not be the right weather, or there may be an accident on the road, or you may not have 2 or 3 ways of getting from A to B, where you may say, you know what, that's not an autonomous use case. We're going to send a driver to pick that person up. For 5% of cases, everything is going to fall into place. And we will send an autonomous car. The user will be able to pick, do you want, there's an autonomous car, yes or no? And we'll be able to service that A for B. That 5% is going to go to 10 and 15 and 20 as our computers and our algorithms learn more and more about what it takes to drive in a city in a real life situation. And every minute of every day, that driver, that computer is going to get better and know Phoenix better and better and better. And in 5 years, we'll have the perfect driver in Phoenix. We will have to retrain that driver in every single city. We're going to have to build out 3D maps of these cities. And it will take time, but over a period of time, you essentially have a driver who becomes the perfect driver. It'll take 10 to 15 years, but that's the feathering in that I'm talking about.
Will a child born today, will they ever need to learn how to drive?
A child born today? No, I don't think so.
So within sort of 20 years from now, we will...
I don't think so. Listen, I hear some groans.
And also,
I heard a couple of groans. 1.3 million people die from car crashes every year. 1.3 million people die from car crashes every year. That doesn't count an estimated 20 to 50 million people that are injured. Okay, this is actually a public safety issue. If you look at cars, 96% of cars, 96% of time, cars are sitting there not being used. It is a huge amount of pollution that's caused by these cars being in the road, and a huge amount of wasted time. So the safety is there. Electrification is absolutely key, and sharing these platforms is going to allow us to be much safer and also put our assets where they add value.
But it's quite interesting because when you first came in, I remember you sounding somewhat more skeptical about self-driving cars. You've been converted. Is that a?
The choir has spoken, and I'm listening. It's pretty exciting technology out there. But again, it will be a hybrid technology for some period of time.
What about flying cars? That came as a slight surprise.
Yes, that's a great project that we're working on. It's called Uber Elevate. And it is actually about battery technology.
It would have helped a lot of people here.
I know. I wish that I was available. We'll launch it here if we can. But battery technology is allowing us to have multiple rotors on planes, or helicopters, if you want to call them that. These rotors that are much smaller will be much quieter than helicopters are. Much quieter, much safer. If you add sharing into the equation, you can actually get the economics of going from A to B. We think within 5 to 7 years to a place where normal people would think about taking these flying cars. That'll be the beginning, and then it's about scaling. And we're working with a number of partners right now.
Do you think the regulation on flying cars, I've heard some proponents of it argue that it might be easier than it has been on driverless cars, because driverless cars, you have to deal with existing roads, existing everything. Flying cars, essentially, you're going into unconquered space.
I think that mayors that are forward-thinking understand that traffic and pollution are a real issue, and I think flying cars can be a significant solution to traffic issues in cities. And these cars, to start with, they're going to be very specific. They'll be kind of highways in the air. There'll be very specific routes that these flying cars go on. They're not going to be able to take you to your backyard and land in your backyard. There'll be these skyports. So there'll be very specific routes that you go on. And I think if you build a regulatory framework that has that kind of structure around it, I think you get to a better solve.
Can I drag you back somewhat reluctantly back to the real world? But you have Rajiv Misra, who came in with you from SoftBank.
Yes.
He's going to become a director. Last week, he said that Uber should focus on repairing its market share in the US and on key European markets rather than going to new ones. Do you agree with that? Is that the way you look at Uber?
I think one of the fundamental strengths of Uber is the global scope that we have. This is
you
a brand.
Had that motto, everywhere. What's it? Everywhere for everyone.
Yeah, everywhere for everyone.
You want to make it some places for some people?
No, we like the everywhere for everyone. It's much sexier than some places for some people. That's
telling me.
Just not interesting. I do think seriously though that the global scope that our company brings is important. Our being able to build technology that we can amortize essentially everywhere in the world is hard, but it is part of the fundamental value that we introduce. So I would look at Uber very much as a global brand. That said, we're going to look at all opportunities, but at this point, we are leaning forward. In 2018, for us, is going to be very much a lean forward year for the company.
But without, I'm not trying to create new boardroom tension at Uber, but that would appear that SoftBank is keener on a more limited idea, whilst you're keener on everywhere for everyone.
Well, listen, SoftBank is a very important shareholder. They're our largest shareholder, and many of our shareholders have opinions over what's the right thing to do. Ultimately, the governance of the company is going to be at the board, and we'll have those discussions at the board, and we'll set our long-term strategy and then execute on it.
One of the things which Uber played, perhaps not very fortunately, a role in was the whole sexual harassment questions and everything to do with that. I suppose one very obvious question: do you think that you have solved that part of the culture? But secondly, do you think that this is a real revolution and it's going to stick?
I think that what was happening at Uber was serious, and I think that while what Uber went through was difficult, I think the Susan Fowler blog was probably one of the best things that happened for Uber, and it certainly started a movement that's an incredibly important movement of the company. I'd be reticent to say that it's solved.
Yeah.
But it's not an endemic issue within the culture of the company, and I think the company has learned, and I think the company took very harsh and appropriate steps to make sure that kind of behavior is absolutely clear, that kind of behavior is not accepted in any way, shape, or form of the company, regardless of where you are, regardless of if you're a great performer or not. So I think we're at the right place for Uber as a company, but I think in general, we're not where we need to be in terms of women in senior positions, making sure that we're welcoming of women in technology, and we help women really build their careers within our company. There's a great kind of bottoms-up energy there, but we're not where we need to be, and we have a lot of work ahead of us.
On the issue of, you talked about the top performers, is that looking back, and also I suppose looking forward for many of the people in this room, because there are a lot of people's businesses which have been affected by this. If you had to give lessons to other people who are now looking at this issue, perhaps more seriously than they have done before, is the really bad issue, and I suppose I'm thinking some ways about the media industry in this, is that giving top performers more room for maneuver or whatever than people, or more discretion than people thought? Is that top performers need to be treated the same as everybody else?
I think they absolutely need to be held accountable. One of the really valuable lessons that I got early in my life was actually through Jack Welch, and he said, it's very tempting to allow top performers to misbehave in any way, but for me, he was talking about being aligned with the CEO. Sometimes you allow top performers. The tendency is, well, let them get away with some kind of behavior that is not the right behavior because they're so good. And what Jack told me very early on is that it's the top performers who are problematic culturally that are the most dangerous, because they have followership within the company, because people look up to them. So he's like the dumb person who is bad culturally. He's not the problem, because everyone says, well, that's a dumb person, so who cares? It's the smart person who has followership. So it is incredibly important for the top performers to actually be held to account more radically than anyone else, because they're the ones who have followership at the company, and they have to set the example. So for me personally, that has absolutely guided how I've managed. Expedia was a company that had, excellent cultural values. And one of the first things we did at Uber was to go out and reset our cultural values, and we call them norms, because to me, it's not just these values that you put on the wall and kind of people stare at and it's all nice. It's about behavior. And we set out to change behavior at Uber, and I think that the company was thirsting for it, and we are starting on a path, and I believe it's going to be a positive path.
An inevitable question, I hope you won't regard it as a cheap shot, but you talked about smart people who have followers throughout a company. I mean, Travis would seem to be the epitome of that sort of figure. Is that, do you think of him as being in that category of people that Jack Welch was talking about?
I think, listen, Travis was the CEO of the company, and he had incredible followership, and he was held to account, right? I mean, he's no longer the CEO of the company, and he's a board member. He's a big investor, and so he's absolutely going to play a part on the board. But we've also been very clear as a company that we do have to make a break with the past, with how we behaved as a company. And to some extent, with the new CEO being a very different kind of a CEO. So in the end, you have to be held accountable, and I think that Travis was held accountable, and at this point, he's a board member and a constructive one at that.
If you look around the world now, where do you see the next competitors to Uber? You've obviously got Lyft breathing down your neck.
Yes, yes.
Where else do they come from?
Well, I think that as you move into a world of autonomy, the position of the car manufacturers, the position of, for example, Google, who's developing Waymo and Waymo autonomous technology, you're going to get a lot of players interested in this space. And a lot of people think about Uber and ride sharing as a significant enterprise, and it is. But the fact is that we account for less than 1% of miles driven on the road now. When autonomy comes in, that number over the next 10 years is going to be closer, I believe, to 15 to 20%. So because we're not yet a true alternative to car ownership, and I believe that as you bring autonomous and you bring the price of mobility down and make it available to everybody, everywhere, then we become a real alternative to car ownership, and that really opens up the market for us, but it also opens us up to many more competitors.
And is Google at the forefront of those competitors at the moment?
Google is one of many. I think that they've developed very strong autonomous technology, but what we think, which is exceptional, is having autonomous technology and the network under one roof, which allows us to use autonomous in a very practical way, nearer than you think.
This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
So live from New York and New Jersey, streaming on YouTube. Yep, it is Friday, October 9th, 2020. TGIF, but also FYI, because this is a really big day for us. Jason, me, our whole BW team, because it's our last Friday, 4-hour show together right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
It is indeed. I am going off to a new project at Bloomberg to be the chief correspondent for Quick Take, our new network that is launching next month. I am so sad to leave the team, so sad to leave you, Carol Masser, so I'm going to enjoy every minute of today.
Well, me too. Like I said, I've been counting all the last seconds that we have together. All right, we're going to talk about this and a lot more over the next 4 hours, but we got to get you going on this Friday with a check on that trading day. Hey, Charlie Pellet.
Well, hello there. A lot going on in the markets right now. First of all, let me give you the numbers, give you the why in just a moment here. S&P up 31, a gain there of 0.9%. The Dow's up 170, up 0.6. NASDAQ up 144. That is a gain of 1.3%. 10-year now up 1/32, 10-year yield 0.78%. Gold up 1.7%, 19.25 the ounce, and crude is down 1.3%, $40.67 the ounce. President Trump says he would like to see a bigger coronavirus relief package and wants more aid than Congress is offering. His remarks came during Rush Limbaugh's radio show. Stay with Bloomberg for the very latest. Again, recapping here, equities higher, S&P up 31, on track for an up week, up today by 0.9%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. So lots to get to today. It's been, as you heard from Charlie, kind of an interesting day in the markets. We've got the president right now who is, I guess, guest hosting Rush Limbaugh's radio show. So we're constantly monitoring headlines coming out of that. I mean, it's really something. I mean, we've come to expect the unexpected. That is for sure something we've learned together, Carol Masser, over the years.
Totally.
But Listen, this is a market and a world that's going to keep us on our toes. Let's do the best we can in setting the Business Week agenda. For that, we turn to Vincent Signorella, global macro strategist for Bloomberg. He joins us on the phone from White Plains. And Dave Wilson, he's our stocks editor, of course, author of the Chart and Stock of the Day. He joins us from New Jersey. So, Vince, if you're a trader looking at this market, kind of looking at this world right now, what are you talking about?
Well, first thing I want to talk about is thank you very much. You've been one of the most gracious people I have met at Bloomberg, and we're going to miss you, but I'm sure you're going on to bigger and better things. And everyone should know how this man has held hands and mentored young people in this company, and he's an absolute star.
Well, thank you, Vince. That's very, very nice of you to say. I
You're
really
very
appreciate
kind.
it.
No, seriously. And now for the markets. Fade, fade, fade. There is no deal coming. McConnell is not going to be able to get a deal of this magnitude through the Senate. I don't know why when people report this, they don't keep going back to what he said. This morning, he basically said, why am I going to fracture a party 4 weeks before an election when he knows he can't get this through the Senate? So they could agree on $5 trillion for all that matters. I'll be okay. There's so many people involved in this.
I know. I'm upset too about Jason leaving me. I know. It's affecting all of us.
I can't even talk.
I got it. I hear you. Please, I get it.
McConnell and there are senators who don't even think that any more aid is necessary, let alone 1.8, 2.2, whatever number you want to put
A lot
it on.
of senators, I think, Vince, right?
Yeah,
Not
no,
just a
quite a
couple,
lot.
but a bunch.
The crazy part is we know that there's been division in D.C. politics, but it's usually between the Democrats and the Republicans. But to see kind of the division, Vince, within the Republican Party about this just a few weeks from an election is kind of mind-blowing.
Well, if I can, it's not an easy thing to explain, but having lived 6 years in the Midwest, I can tell you that these are really, it's a fiscally responsible feeling. It's not the way we do things in New York and California. They have a very hard time understanding that. And the same with Illinois, but they put up with Illinois because it's close. It's in the middle of the country. But there really is no appetite whatsoever to give a great deal of aid to states like New York, California, Florida, that the feeling in the more frugal, fiscally responsible states is, we do it the right way, you give it away, and now you expect us to pay for it.
But let's not forget that New York and California economy are very important to the overall U.S. economy.
Totally, but I will bring you back to when Hurricane Sandy hit New York. How long did it take aid to get to New York? Even, the politicians did not want to give money to New York City. They just didn't want to do it. There was a big fight over that. So you have to take that into account when you see this going, and it's built into the mindset of politics. And McConnell knows this, and he's looking at it and saying, I can't win this. I can't get it through.
Yeah.
So it's most likely going to have to wait
right
until after the election, which means you're really talking about after Inauguration Day.
That is amazing. So wait.
Go
So
ahead.
I want to bring in Dave because Dave, let's look at the markets because we have seen investors, and Vince has talked about this as you have, push the markets, the equity markets higher on expectations of more aid. So if the scenario that Vince just outlined, we've got some enthusiasm a little bit in the markets today, what happens?
It's a good question, especially when you look at a day like today and you see the two consumer-related groups in the S&P 500 are among the day's best performers. I mean, consumer discretionary, which of course includes retailers and therefore Amazon.com, is leading the way here, and then the makers of consumer staples, food, beverage, tobacco, not too far behind. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how all of this shakes out. And I will say, Jason, you will be missed, and we'll talk more about in the next segment when I get to my chart and stock of the day.
All right. That's a good tease. That is a very good tease. Vince, final word from you. You go into the weekend. You don't think there's stimulus. You're pouring yourself a vodka. What are you thinking about when it comes to the market? I mean, we're 25 days from a presidential election. And not just a presidential election, a massive national, state, and local election.
Yes. I think the the market likes this idea. They're looking long term. They're thinking 2021 is going to be a spectacular year. It has every indication that it will be, but it's likely to be more skewed towards the second half than the first half. You look for opportunities to fade it, but you don't want to get run over in the meantime, which is probably what happened to a few people today, to be honest.
Totally. All right, Vincent Signorelli, you're the best. Thank you so much. Global macro strategist for Bloomberg. Joining us on the phone from White Plains, just down the road from me. Dave Wilson will be back with him at 3:30 for his chart of the day and his stock of the day after the close. Carol?
Yeah, yes, indeed. So looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to the next 4 hours, Jason, not just because they're my last 4 with you in this format, but also because we've got some of our favorite voices. Craig Gordon's going to be with us, our DC Bureau Chief. Politics and the virus, as we just talked about, front and center, and our go-to person, certainly in-house, is Craig Gordon, one of them. So looking forward to kind of wrapping up what was a cray-cray week in Washington. We've also got The Economist that's become a pandemic sensation. We talked about her yesterday.
We talked about her yesterday. We're going to talk to her today. Listen, if you are a parent, she's a must-read. Absolutely. Yeah. Her columns, her books, all of it. Just
Reese
really
Witherspoon is following her on Twitter. I'm just going to say that.
There you go. We're also going to head down to my hometown, the ATL, check in with Frank Patterson. He's got a massive new project underway.
It's huge.
Really Hollywood South, man. Yeah. And then Sip or Sweat.
Sip or Sweat. We couldn't finish out today without doing another version, and this time it's going to be Sweat. We're going to talk about boutique fitness, man. They are really kind of fighting for their lives at this point. So we're going to talk with 2 major players. You know these 2 people.
I do indeed. Yeah, John Kanarick, he is one of the most influential investors across the fitness landscape. So is excited to catch up with him. And CEO of SLT, it's one of the hottest boutique fitness concept in New York City, but they're struggling. So this pandemic, it has laid it bare.
All right, let's do the Bloomberg Business Week Bite of the Day, one number that tells us a lot. Today's number is $2 trillion. U.S. corporations are putting $2 trillion in the bank in the run-up to the U.S. election. U.S. companies skittish about the pandemic and an uncertain outcome of that election have reconsidered spending plans on everything from shareholders to factories. As a result, Jason, it's adding up. $2 trillion in the bank.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Yeah.
That's a big just in case fund.
It is, but folks are worried, that's for sure. All right, let's get down to Washington now. Nancy Lyons is there with some headlines. Hey, Nancy.
Hey, Jason. Well, the president is signaling he is willing to pass a stimulus bill. Joe Lavorgna is chief economist for the National Economic Council and spoke with Bloomberg.
What I can tell you is that I know we're negotiating in good faith, and Secretary Mnuchin is working hard, and the president wants a deal.
The size of a package is still a question. President Trump said this afternoon on the Rush Limbaugh show that he'd like to see more aid than either the Democrats or the Republicans are offering. Well, the White House says a new story in the New York Times is a hit piece. The paper is reporting candidate Trump received $21 million in highly unusual payments from a Nevada hotel back in 2016 as Trump's presidential campaign was struggling for cash. The information was in tax records recently obtained by the paper. The payments could violate tax or campaign finance laws. Well, Joe Biden's campaign is holding off of releasing its funding totals for September, apparently out of concern that it might prevent people from giving in the last weeks of this race. House Democrats are introducing legislation to form a commission to review a president's health and fitness for office. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the actions of President Trump made the bill necessary, even though it will apply just to future presidents.
We are reminded of the necessity of action by the health of the current president. With this bill, the Congress honors our oath to support and defend the Constitution and protect the American people.
The 25th Amendment is a vehicle for temporarily removing a president if he or she is deemed to be unable to perform the duties of the office. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Nancy, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Coming up, we're going to check in with one of our go-tos, really our go-to doc on all of the virus-related headlines. We're talking about Ian Lesbader.
Yeah.
And ahead of that, we should talk about one of the most read stories, Carol, because it's about this rapid COVID test. This has been, I feel like, the most important story of the last couple weeks. The rapid testing, we have seen it succeed. We have certainly seen it fail. And this story by John Tazzi, Angelica Levito, and Emma Court talking about a risk of false positives.
Yeah, listen, remember, was it a few weeks ago, a month ago, where the White House came out, big press conference, and they unveiled these rapid tests? We did a cover story about the importance of them and really kind of helping the world get back to normal. So this push to get them out and arm nursing homes with rapid coronas tests, apparently stumbling on concern that the tests return false positives. This is important. So putting at least one state at odds with federal officials over the value of the test. Nevada, this month, ordering nursing homes to stop using the point-of-care tests after they found more than 20 instances where positive findings were overturned by more precise testing. And so, you know, this is important, and this is, if you're going to put these rapid tests out there, they've got to work.
They got to work. and by the way, like false negatives or false positives, it's all bad. You know, like it's got to be right.
Correct. That's especially right. If you get a test result, that's going to determine what kind of behavior you are, and that's going to essentially determine whether or not you could possibly infect somebody else or not. So, this is that whole.
And if you get a false positive, like especially if you're an hourly worker or you need to travel or something like that, you need to take care of someone. If you get a false positive, then you end up quarantining or isolating, I should say more precisely, for 2 weeks. Like, what?
This speaks to the remarks in the magazine that are also the cover story about the White House policy that's often been, you know, in conflict with what states are doing and not really a cohesive policy. And that creates a lot of confusion, certainly across the country, which many say is a reason why our numbers have been higher than other developed nations and other places. You are listening to Bloomberg Radio.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pelleton. Up Friday, stocks are gaining as stimulus speculation takes center stage. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all higher. S&P up now by 27, a gain of 0.8%. S&P up for a third day with the White House planning to offer a $1.8 trillion stimulus proposal. The Dow's up 139, now up by 0.5%. NASDAQ up 138. For NASDAQ, that is a gain of just about 1.2%. Should point out that stocks are on track for the second weekly gain, with the S&P now up by 3.8% this week. 10-year up 3/32, 10-year yield 0.77%. Gold up 1.8%, $19.27 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.3%, $40.66 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, another week of so many headlines related to the virus. It is such a pleasure, as always, to catch up with Dr. Ian Lustbader, our soothsayer, our truth teller, our guy who really helps us understand where we're going and where we are. Clinical Associate Professor of Medicine at NYU's Langone Medical Center. He joins us on the phone from New York City. Ian, how are you?
Hi, happy Friday. Hag Sameach. Hope everyone is doing well. We are so far thriving, but seeing lots of patients and seeing some long haulers and some COVID patients as well. So we are not out of the woods just yet.
So let's talk about that. I mean, what is the reality check for this area that we all live in, specifically the New York City area I'm talking about? Like, where are we right now? We see hotspots reported, but you are quite literally, Ian, on the front lines. Tell me more about what you're seeing.
So, we're definitely seeing an increase in cases, and I think whenever you see hotspots, the danger is that extending into other areas of the community. We're certainly seeing in the Midwest as well, not just in New York City, some hotspots, but throughout the country. So I think until we are all able to get a preventative medicine, or until monoclonal antibody infusions are widely available, we really have to resort to the old traditional infectious disease controls of, mask wearing, even though we know that's not 100% effective, and social distancing. And last week we talked about some in the more religious community, and it is important that everyone follow the guidelines. There is no problem. There's no conflict between religion and spirituality and good health and science. All religions really emphasize healthy behavior, and this is just part of that for the time being. So there should be no conflict with being observant in the way you feel is appropriate, and also doing good behavior for the community.
Right. I mean, I feel like that's been one common theme, Ian, that we've talked about. It's the whole virus is all about a sense of community. It's protecting others. I mean, you want to protect yourself, of course, but you really have to think about, that's what mask wearing is ultimately about. When you look at, though, what's going on around the country, I think I was kind of thrown when I was watching some programs, some news programs, and they were showing a map of the country and showing where we're seeing increases in cases, and it was almost blanketed across the country. So is this kind of the second wave that we've all been talking about? Is this the beginning of it?
Yes, I think that is the case. We certainly saw a drop in the number of cases, and really around the world we're seeing, these second waves. And unfortunately, if you look at even back to 1918, the Spanish flu, these viral infections do come in waves. They do mutate a bit. People do develop some slowly but surely herd immunity. And again, the idea is to kind of flatten the curve. No one ever said we're going to completely stop cases. But if you're able to decrease hospital surging by wearing masks and using prudent behavior, that will kind of protect the healthcare system so that people who need ventilators or people who are sicker can be admitted, and there's more reserve in the system. So I think we are seeing the second wave. We're seeing it really around the world. This has happened in prior pandemics, and I think we have to continue certainly to be prudent.
So, Ian, I have a feeling that you've been getting a lot of phone calls and texts and emails from friends, family, patients about everything we've seen over the last week or so, especially with the treatment of the president around various drugs. We count on you to separate the signal from the noise. What do we need to know about what we've learned, especially in terms of therapeutics over the last few days?
So not everyone gets the same treatment as the president, but I think he had a very aggressive regimen, and I think actually a very smart regimen. It's certainly something that it would be great to offer many patients, and really all of these medications work in different ways, just like we do HIV cocktails or hepatitis C cocktails, where we have several medications that work slightly differently for the viruses. In combination, they can be highly effective, and I think, the president is a good example. He was in a high-risk group, being male, older, overweight, and there are other risk factors that other people have: high blood pressure, diabetes, lung disease, kidney disease, that we all know about. And I think that's also why our death rate, our case fatality rate, is a little higher here. We say, why isn't America not doing so well? Part of it is our fault. Our population tends to be overweight, more sedentary, couch potatoes. I don't want to generalize, but we definitely have.
You're not wrong. I think that's a fair assessment.
Well, we talk about data. I think the data would bear you right.
Yeah.
Bear out. Yeah.
Exactly. We have almost a 30% obesity rate, and quite frankly, that's a high risk with COVID patients, and I think that is why we have a higher case fatality rate. I don't think it has anything to do with management, which is kind of standardized. But in any case, he got this cocktail of monoclonal antibodies by Regeneron, and Lilly is working on this. Regeneron, by the way, is headed by a colleague, classmate, George Yancopoulos from Columbia Medical School, and Regeneron is smart. These are antibodies, monoclonal antibodies developed in mice.
Ian, hold that thought, because we want to go along this line, because I know the president talked a lot about it, and we've also had listeners saying, well, wait a minute, can everybody easily get this? Can it ramp up quickly? So we want to continue. We're going to do a little bit of news, and then we're going to bring you right back. We are talking with Dr. Ian Lustbader, really such a smart voice when it comes to everything on the virus, and he's really been a go-to for us. He's Clinical Associate Professor of Medicine at NYU Langone Medical Center. He's going to be back in just a moment. In the meantime, you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar, Jason Kelly, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 1061. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Well, coming up, we're going to continue our conversation with our pal, Dr. Ian Lustbader, talk a little bit more about some of these treatments that are coming out, because I know I've got questions, and I'm guessing he's fielding a lot of them, right?
Right, and I feel like there's going to be a lot coming up as, consumers' patience, essentially, and we need to understand kind of what's coming our way. All right, we'll get back to him in just a moment. Let's get back to your top business stories. Another check on that trading day. Here is Charlie Powell.
Hi, thank you very much. We begin with this headline from the Bloomberg Professional Service. Aeromexico's $1 billion bankruptcy loan has been approved by a New York court. Also, J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon sees personal travel resuming before business travel. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ, they're all advancing on this Friday, on track for another winning week for the U.S. stock market. Stocks rallied on pace for the best weekly increase since August, as traders bet that lawmakers are moving closer to providing more fiscal stimulus. Here's where we stand. The S&P is up 27, a gain of 0.8%. The Dow is up 141, up 0.5. NASDAQ up 137. For NASDAQ, that is a gain of 1.2%. Treasury yields mostly flat, a dollar gauge slipping. Right now we've got the 10-year up 3/32, 10-year yield 0.77%. Gold up 1.9%, 19.29 an ounce, and they've mediated an end to a potential oil workers strike in Norway. Crude, West Texas Intermediate, down 1.4%, 40.60 a barrel. President Trump scheduled to be getting a TV doctor's assessment tonight. It was a week ago, of course, that the president first unveiled his positive test for the coronavirus. Dr. Andrew Pekosh is a professor of molecular microbiology and immunology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. He was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television.
He's approaching that phase where he should be able to resume all of his duties per what his doctors have said. I think a bigger issue, though, that you see from the debate, that you see from the Supreme Court nominee announcement, is there has to be a better sense of responsibility, to be honest, in terms of making sure the public health and the social interaction interventions are in place to limit the spread of the virus in the White House and in this staff.
The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. President Trump credits an antibody treatment from Regeneron Pharmaceuticals for a quick recovery. Regeneron shares, they're up now by 0.2%. Recapping equities higher, S&P up 27, a gain of 0.8%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, let's get back to our conversation with Dr. Ian Lustbader over at NYU's Langone Medical Center. So, Ian, you were starting to talk about, and we stopped you only because we want the full answer as to how we need to be thinking about these treatments as everyday people. And I'm glad you made the distinction that, we can't all just copter over to Walter Reed and be like, give me everything, give me what you got. But how do we think about it?
So, for one, it does show you that in the White House, even though people are tested every day, because there's an incubation period, you can be infected and not recover virus from the nasopharynx or from saliva, that this is not a 100% foolproof approach. Testing people every day, whether it's back to school, and we do need to accept that it is imperfect, no matter how careful you can be. And obviously, at the White House, they're very meticulous, and in a close proximity, people working together. Really, all you need is one person where that test doesn't catch it until they are more viremic, where there's more virus there. So, he became symptomatic and really got a cocktail, an unproven, but I think a very intelligent, smart cocktail, with not all of those drugs yet FDA approved. One was remdesivir, which is approved as an antiviral, and we do give those to patients in the hospital. Dexamethasone, which typically is given, you don't want to give that too early because it is a mild as a steroid and immunosuppressant, but we do give it to people who are getting more inflammation. So I suspect they were a little concerned about him with blood oxygen, or perhaps his x-ray was abnormal. I don't know that. But that definitely decreases inflammation. And probably one of the key drugs, which is yet to be approved, monoclonal antibodies, and Regeneron is one of a couple of companies working on this, and at least with the Regeneron system, headed by one of our Columbia PNS alumni, just to put in a plug, these are mice that have a humanized immune system, and monoclonal antibodies are developed to the spike protein, which is the common protein. So even though the virus may mutate, that spike that's typical on the outer shell of the virus has monoclonal antibodies, and that can dramatically reduce the amount of virus in the bloodstream and really help the body's own, by time, for the virus to be cleared and your own immune system clear it. So that, I think, has great potential. The problem, of course, is it's given intravenously, so you can't just pop a pill.
Yeah, you can't just pop a pill.
Right.
Right. And it is yet to be approved, but I think it certainly will be a big addition to the armamentarium. And like many other viruses and drugs, having that combination therapy, an antiviral to reduce viral replication, antibodies immediately, so you don't have to wait for your body to develop antibodies. You're given these passive antibodies, which soak up the virus, and then perhaps dexamethasone in some patients. So, this makes sense. I think we're making progress on treatments, and we need to do that until a vaccine arrives, which, again, will probably be very helpful. It may not work in everyone, but, again, as long as we have a 60% effectiveness and as long as we're able to get to more of a herd immunity, that should make a big difference, but that's not until spring.
Right, exactly. And as our reporter, Bob Lingreth, who's got the cover story of the magazine, and he's done a lot of reporting on Gilead and Remdesivir, he said, Regeneron only has about 50,000 doses available, and he says we've got 50,000 cases of the virus popping up every day. So the numbers are not in our favor for even some of the treatments like that. So it's tricky, Ian. Just got about 30 seconds left.
Yep, we're making progress. I think they're going to ramp up. That's why we have to do what we can do while further therapeutics and vaccines are being developed, which is acting smart, and we know what to do. And,
wear a mask, social distancing.
Absolutely, you got it.
All right, kiddo, be good. Have a good weekend, and we love talking to you. I don't know if you know, but this is Jason's last time with me on this show. Yeah, he's not leaving Bloomberg, but I know we both
great working with you guys.
Yeah, love you, Ian. You're the best, and we really the stuff that you have brought our listeners has been invaluable over the summer. So I'm excited to be a listener and keep listening to all your wisdom, because you really have kept us honest and our listeners honest throughout the course of this. We have leaned on you heavily and know that you have many important things to do. So we're grateful to you for making time for us, because it's really important that we get the right information out there and from people who are really doing it, and we're grateful to you.
He's often been at the hospital, like in the thick of it.
Totally.
And found some time for us, so we really appreciate it. All right, let's get back to world and national news headlines. Over to Nancy Lyons we go in our D.C. studio. Hi, Nancy.
Hey, Carol. President Trump says he wants an even bigger stimulus than what Democrats have offered so far, seeming to undercut his own negotiator, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, who had prepared a $1.8 trillion offer to make to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. White House Economic Advisor Larry Kudlow says the talks are continuing.
Secretary Mnuchin, Speaker Pelosi, will be on the horn this afternoon.
Pelosi and House Democrats have proposed a $2.2 trillion plan, which is down from the $3.4 trillion package passed by the House back in May. The negotiations have been deadlocked for weeks as the economy struggles to recover from the ongoing coronavirus outbreak. The Trump administration is sounding optimistic about reaching an understanding with Russia on nuclear weapons. Bloomberg's Nathan Hager reports from Washington.
A source tells Bloomberg News Presidents Trump and Putin tentatively agreed to a nuclear weapons freeze during a recent phone call. The details haven't been ironed out yet, but the idea would be for both the U.S. and Russia to declare the number of warheads they currently have and commit not to go beyond that. The freeze would be accompanied by an extension of the New START treaty, which is due to expire in February. Till now, the U.S. had demanded China take part in negotiations. That country is rapidly expanding its nuclear arsenal. Both Russia and China opposed three-way talks. In Washington, I'm Nathan Hager, Bloomberg Radio.
Hurricane Delta is heading toward the Gulf Coast as a Category 2 storm with winds of 110 miles per hour. Landfall is expected tonight in the part of Louisiana where Hurricane Laura caused more than 30 deaths in August. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
All right, Nancy, thank you so much. So I sent this story to you guys earlier today because it's one of my favorite stories, and I was fortunate enough to be in the interview that produced this. It's all about Smuckers, but it's really about Folgers coffee, and go figure, the kids love, I was going to say kids love Smuckers. The kids love Folgers.
The kids love Folgers. Yeah, it's a coffee
Not little
brand.
kids, the millennials.
Millennials. That's the headline on our story. Millennials embracing baby boom icon Folgers in the at-home coffee era. I said when I was in college, I had Folgers in the cupboard, you know, when you quick needed a cup of coffee. So it's really wild. You guys caught up with the CEO of J.M. Smucker. He's Mark Smucker. He's the fifth generation of company leaders from that company, who obviously
From that
founded
family.
it. Yeah, it's
I
so
mean,
cool.
it's
I love
amazing.
that. I love that. And it's curious, what else did you hear from him about what people are putting in their pantries?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. We talked a lot about Uncrustables, which you're probably familiar with. A lot of peanut butter and jelly going on right now. And the at-home coffee thing, you know, because they also have branding deals and distribution deals with Cafe Bustelo and Dunkin'. And so, listen, people are not going out as much. They're not going to their office, so they're not stopping by a Dunkin' or a Starbucks or whatever as much. And so they're making much more at home. There was a lot of pantry stocking at the beginning. We've heard that from other CEOs we've talked to, so that's moderated a little bit. They have been running their plants full. They're going to build a little inventory in anticipation of the second wave, but it's really good. And what's interesting, daily production of Uncrustables is now reaching as much as 3.5 million daily production.
I just love the word Uncrustables. And they've also been, you know, building up their pet business like we've seen from Mars and some others.
And Unilever,
Yeah, I mean, those dogs and cats and critters are eating well.
Although he did say dogs, they usually eat at home, so that's not as much of a thing. They weren't dining out as much.
All right, you're listening to Bloomberg.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. U.S. stocks higher, on pace for the best weekly increase since August as traders bet that lawmakers are moving closer to providing more fiscal stimulus. S&P up now by 27. That's a gain of 0.8%. The Dow up 146, up 0.5. NASDAQ is up 135, a gain of 1.2%. 10 years up 3/32, 10-year yield 0.77%. Gold up $35 the ounce. That's a gain of 1.9%. Precious metal now at $19.29, and West Texas Intermediate crude slumping 1.5%, down 63 cents a barrel at $40.55. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly and Carol Masser here with you on a Friday afternoon. And
can I just say, it's a story, it's a map, it's a podcast. That's how important this story is.
Yeah, it is such incredible work that this guy has been doing throughout the course of the pandemic, although even before, I feel like he shifted effortlessly from telling us everything we needed to know about the trade war to everything we needed to know about the economic impact of the pandemic, especially when it comes to the embodiment of the K-shaped recovery in a lot of ways, Carol. You know, like he is helping us understand this, I think, through the stories of real people, and this story is no exception. Talk about Sean Donnan. He is Senior Trade and Globalization Reporter for Bloomberg. He joins us on the phone from Maryland, but a lot of this is based on some incredible reporting, Sean, you did in Cleveland. Tell us about what you found, because this is part of a series of stories that really capture what's going on in America.
Thanks, Jason. Well, you guys are much too kind. I should just let you guys talk about this story.
No.
We're just going to talk about how great you are. You have to tell us about the actual story.
No, go on.
Look, I think one of the things we've been struggling to get our heads around as people in America right now is this idea of different letter-shaped recoveries. What does a V-shaped recovery mean? What does a K-shaped recovery mean? Are we going to see a W, a Nike swoosh? What are we going to see? And what's clear is that we're seeing a recovery that is being felt differently depending on where you are on the income ladder, where you are in terms of home ownership, where you are in terms of your ability to work from home, whether you're part of what I've started calling bread baking America. You know, that's those of us who are out there learning how to bake sourdough and have really bought a lot of flour in the last 6 months, or breadline America, which is a much sadder place, which is those people who are out there who are struggling with housing security and food insecurity as a result of having lost their jobs as a result of the pandemic and the economic collapse we've seen since then. One of the things I set out to look at was the question of housing, and I really was my head was spinning on this one, and finally I settled on the idea of telling it through the story of two different houses. And that really gets at the divide in the recovery right now. If you are a homeowner in a suburb of Cleveland called Lakewood, you are seeing demand for properties soar right now. You are seeing property prices soar right now. And we talked to a newlywed couple who bought a house on Daleview Drive there, and they ended up being one of half a dozen people who bid for this house within hours of it going online. And they have a very happy story to tell. They're two tech workers, and they are doing well in life right now. They are working from home, and they've got this brand new home that they're moving into. On the other side of town, we went to the Mount Pleasant neighborhood, and I've been spending some time listening to proceedings in the Cleveland Housing Court. And in doing that, I ran across an eviction case involving a woman called Calais Gavings. Calais Gavings is a nursing assistant. She has rented a house in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood for $900 a month. And at one point earlier this year, she was laid off. She fell behind on the rent. When she was back at work, she just wasn't making as much as she used to, and so she ended up in the Cleveland Housing Court, caught up in an eviction crisis. And so these are, today, these two very different stories that you see at play in the housing market. But then you start scratching the surface of these things, and you discover that actually you can find really the legacy of the last crisis way back in 2008 and the subprime and foreclosure crisis in the property records that involve Calais Gaving's house, and also just in the diverging paths that you've had between homes in predominantly black neighborhoods in Cleveland and their values and those that you've seen in predominantly white neighborhoods. So it's a recovery that's unequal, but it's also building on the legacy of the last crisis.
That's what's so troubling, Sean. And that's what, like you say, whether it was the east side of town or the west side of town, west side being wealthier, east side not so much, where it's mostly black neighborhoods and a high percentage of rental properties, it was already a struggling area, right? And then you layer on the pandemic and it's just gotten, worse again. But it's also, as you said, it was already an area that wasn't able to completely catch its breath from the last crisis. And, when we talk about wealth creation, I think this is a part of it. Like, these groups of people are never given a chance to create any kind of real wealth in their lives.
It is such a huge part of it, and it has to do with neighborhood stability in a lot of ways. I mean, the house that Calais Gavings, and she moved out at the end of September out of this house, but it's owned by an anonymous LLC, a limited liability company that is actually, if you kind of track it down, is a shell company owned by French investors who have flocked into Cleveland to buy up these cheap properties because they're searching for yield. The investor who owns that property bought it for $65,000 a year ago. They're collecting $900 a month in rent on it. That's a gross annual return of like 16%. It almost doesn't matter if the value of the house goes up, right? This is a cash flow play for those investors. And on the flip side, you have these predominantly white suburbs where you have had pretty steady capital appreciation. This house that we looked at in the neighborhood of Lakewood had actually more than doubled in value in the last 8 or 9 years.
Yeah. And Sean, I feel like, one of the most powerful pieces of your reporting is that you're telling stories that I am sure people in a number of different cities, countless cities across America, and you've been to some of them, you've certainly talked to people in a lot of them, this could be their city too. This is not a Cleveland problem.
Oh, look, absolutely. It's a problem right here in Washington, D.C. I'm out in the predominantly white suburbs of Washington, D.C. I have a very different economic reality from people who are in predominantly black neighborhoods on the other side of the Anacostia River. It's the same thing in New York. It's the same thing in, out west. There is almost no American city where this kind of unequal recovery isn't the story.
Yeah, well...
Can I know we're running out of time, and we could talk a lot more about this, and I highly recommend. I'll put it out on Twitter. I may have already, but I'll do it again because I think it's a must-read. But is there any hope that things change, Sean, in your reporting? We just have about 30, 40 seconds here.
Yeah, no, I think one of the really interesting things is what do you do about something like this? And part of the problem here is that the policy response that's aimed at the broader economy is actually helping accelerate this, right? I mean, we know that the Fed pouring money into markets, lowering interest rates, that lowers mortgage rates. That helps homeowners and so on. There needs to be some kind of targeting for someone like Calais Gavings that say that $900 a month needs to go into building equity in a home rather than simply going to rent that is helping an offshore investor who has no interest in that neighborhood beyond cash flow and return.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, the wealth gap is so apparent, and that's a big part of it. All right, Sean Donnan, thank you. Really, really appreciate it. Your reporting, it is must-read as always. So check out this story. It's in the new double issue of Bloomberg Business Week magazine, available on newsstands and at Bloomberg.com. It's also featured in the Stephanomics podcast with our colleague, Stephanie Flanders. So get that wherever you get your podcast.
All right, for those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week continues. If you're listening on Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, Bay State Business is coming up next. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Bloomberg World Headquarters. I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading on this Friday, October 9th. A rally underway. Stocks on track for a winning week. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ are all advancing on pace for the best weekly increase since July. Traders betting today that lawmakers are moving closer to providing more fiscal stimulus. Treasury yields mostly flat. A dollar gauge slipped. S&P up for a third day, with the White House planning to offer a $1.8 trillion stimulus proposal. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, though, warning earlier that it is unlikely an agreement will be reached before the election. Well, as for the election outcome and the markets, John Normand is head of cross-asset strategy at J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, and he was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television.
To me, where you have the vulnerability in terms of a narrative shift is the possibility that maybe the Senate doesn't flip. And so if Biden is the president, but there's no change in control in Congress, then we're going to still be dealing with the same impasse around fiscal policy that we have now. And all this optimism around the sweep and stimulus and a reboot of the cycle is going to collapse.
And here's where we stand. S&P up 26, higher by 0.8%. The Dow's up 138 points, up 0.5. NASDAQ up 130, up by 1.1%. We've got the 10-year up 330 seconds. 10-year yield now 0.77%. Gold is up 1.8%, $19.28 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.8%, $40.44 a barrel. Goldman Sachs says GE represents the best post-vaccine bet among industrials. Analyst Joe Ritchie saying, quote, "We think GE is the best self-help vaccine story across industrials and see 50% upside to our $10 12-month price target." GE shares now up 2.4%, GE at $6.81. The customer review website Yelp says it will start flagging businesses accused of overtly racist actions, taking a step to address a national movement to recognize racial injustice and across the United States. Yelp shares, they are down today by 1.5%. Again, recapping, stocks higher, S&P up 0.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, so we talked about her yesterday. She is the subject of a story in the magazine which reveals how she is the economist that's become a pandemic sensation by helping stressed out parents. And we've talked with her before. In today's Business Week Economics, we're so delighted, excited to have back with us Emily Oster, author and professor of economics at the Watson Institute for International and Public Affairs at Brown University. She's a Bloomberg opinion columnist, and she joins us on the phone from Providence, Rhode Island. Emily, we really are delighted. We had a great conversation with Esme Deprez, who wrote this great story about you that really gets into your background and also the impact you're having on our world today, especially parents, which we'll talk about in a moment. But talk to us about kind of how you grew up and how you got to where you are today, because I feel like economics is in your bones, your blood, your genetic makeup.
No, it's totally right. So thank you guys for having me, and I'm like incredibly grateful to Esme for having written this article. It's sort of always a little bit nerve-wracking to read about yourself, but I think I was so happy with it. So yeah, I grew up. Both of my parents are economists. That's probably the most salient piece of information. So I have two economist parents. I'm actually married to an economist. So I'm sort of like steeped from birth, more or less, in the idea of using economics for decision making in your household.
And so how does that help you maybe think of it differently? You know, in the sense that if you're kind of living and breathing it all the time, if it really is sort of baked into your very being, do you think that maybe you naturally